Hi there, and welcome to Real Talk in ELT, a podcast about the reality of teaching English. I'm your host, Kelly Pennington. Thank you for joining me today. Great. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Real Talk in ELT. I'm really excited to talk to Samantha because I saw you in July at Brust-Teasel, and I was really happy to see your presentation there. It was great. Enjoyed it. So welcome.
Thank you.
And let me give you a formal introduction before we get into all this stuff, because I don't know anything about what we're going to talk. Well, I know a little bit, but not a lot. So I'm excited to ask you questions. So Samantha Malta is a pedagogical coordinator, language advisor, course designer, and materials writer, and a teacher educator. She worked in regular and bilingual education schools and language institutes. She is a CELTA and young learner CELTA, right? Is it the CELT P? Is it CELT Y?
Y CELTA, yeah. But
Y
it's like
CELTA.
the word, yeah. It's the. I think they have changed the name. It's not Y CELTA anymore.
Y CELTA. I can't
It's
even
the young
keep up.
learners. Yeah, CELTA young learners.
Okay.
Yeah. But not, I don't know.
Anyways.
I need to get the certificate and take a look. But they have changed it, all the names. So
Okay,
doesn't
fair
matter.
enough. It was the CELTA certificate for young learners, people. Has a degree in pedagogy languages for English and Portuguese and a postgraduate diploma in applied linguistics from PUC São Paulo, right? She is currently taking a postgraduate course in school leadership and management at USP, and there's an acronym. What's the ESALQ? Where's that?
ESALQ, it's the association with USP with this other university. So it's
a member of the research group. I don't know if I say LACE, PUC São Paulo. Is it LACE or?
Oh, in Portuguese you say LACE, but
LACE. Okay, yeah.
Yes.
Well, no, fine, good. Please correct me. And this one, the Group of Studies in Bilingual Education, GIB.
Again, in Portuguese you say GEB. Bilingual Education Study Group.
Got it. Okay. At the same university. So welcome. You have a lot of acronyms that I just can't.
I'm so sorry.
No, please continue accumulating the acronyms. More information for all of us to share. So thank you for coming on. And ready to jump into it?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm ready. Thank you, Kelly, again. For this opportunity. Well, let's talk.
Let's talk. Let's get it. Okay. So we had kind of gone back and forth about what we were going to talk about, and we decided on performative play. Please help. I don't teach children. Well, I've taught children in the past. I'm not a young learners teacher, but I actually really understand that it's like super specialized and people really need to have some good background to be able to get into the young learner classroom. So performative play, what is it and what do we need to know?
Okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to clarify that, yes, we're talking about play, performative play, but I'm specialized in young children, but it's not absolutely at all only for children.
Okay, good. Yes. First point. Thank you, Samantha. Because whenever people say performative play, they're like, kids, right?
No, It's awesome with them because play for them is kind of natural, right? I say kind of. Okay, yeah. But no, performative play, we have the conception of seeing play as an activity, as a social activity. And as a social activity, you can play, I can play, anyone can play, right?
I do love a good game. I am quite competitive, so.
Game, it's one, we say play, there are play, the one that games, right, with specific rules, and we want to win. We have the free play, right, children playing whatever they want. There are other types of play, and this performative play, when you think about, I'll try to bring some elements that people usually know and then clarify the similarities and differences, okay? For example, when you are in a theater, you are performing, right? You have the actors there, they're performing something there on the stage. But there they have their lines, they have to memorize, right? What's the difference? Performative play. Let's say that when you're performing, you are a kind of on a stage, but you don't have lines. But
like
you have
improv.
Yeah, you don't. What
Okay.
you do?
It's like the improv comedians that get up there
like
and
improv. Yes, it's
kind of,
but you have, for example, like let's put inside the teaching context. You work with the business English, right? So, okay, let's get I'm going to say SIPO, and then you tell me if it's SIPO or not, okay? You need to teach your student. They need to travel, and he doesn't know how, he's learning English at the moment, and he needs to get in an airplane from a country to another, so he needs to know how to deal in the airport. So this airport situation, okay, that needs to talk with a few people, something very specific that, yes, you're going to teach the chunks, but when you talk about the performance, you're gonna, and I'm gonna talk about online teaching right now, okay? It's also possible, but I'm getting like when you are face-to-face, okay?
Okay.
The environment, the context you're going to provide, you'll be pretty similar to a real situation, okay? So you're not gonna give a paper and say, okay, this is your script, let's rehearse. No, we are going to travel to China, so let's go. And he go through all the process, of course, with, in this example, for example, many students, not only one adult, I'm not sure if it's gonna work, this airport context, okay?
Got it, okay.
So there are rules, specific rules. If he's in an airport, there is a specific things he needs to say, others he can't say, things he needs to, social rules, right? That needs to be followed. So we don't have a script, but we have clear social rules to be followed. So, but say, oh, but my student, you pretend. So yes, think an adult in this situation. So how can we provide a context that you can put this student into a real life situation, can feel it? That's the challenge.
Okay, example, I love this. I love where you're going with this because I have lots of people that are like, I need to do a business presentation. I need to talk to people online. And they want to feel kind of this stress. So, okay, so keep going. Sorry.
And for example, no, that's okay. For example, when I was in teaching people how to use the performative play, okay, it was adults teachers. So I was thinking together with my partner, what can we do? So we set in a context, sometimes, like if it's near election, it was related to elections. If another one's near Carnival, it was related to Carnival. But when we started, they didn't know which was a performance. We just started and put it then into the context. For example, the first one, we pretend we are selling, teaching things like pencils. So I just brought from the US. Do you want to see? Do you want to buy? And they, of course, let me see. Okay, blah, blah, blah. How much is it? So for them, they're really buying things. Okay, and then we start to set the context we want them to feel in order to get in the point to explain then what it means. A performative play, right? Feeling the thing, like, and then we kind of stole something, okay? And then they're like, it's missing, blah, 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 blah. And they got like, oh my gosh, what's happening here? Oh, because it was related to what we were talking, related to other things that in the context. So then at the end, we explain it. Okay. Oh, okay. Now this is what's a performance. So say, okay, performative play is like that. It was how we decide to do in order to have adults feeling the sensation of real life situation and get into the performance because we were so rational.
They didn't really know that it was happening. They had no idea. So you set up the scenario, some kind of thing that you could do in the classroom, and they assumed that you were being genuine, but you were actually going through this performative play with them. Okay, that's cool. I like that idea.
So this is one option when your students are not used to that, because once they are used to this kind of teaching style, let's say that, they let themselves get into the performance. But for the first time, it's an option. So say, oh, I really felt very stressed. Why did you do that?
Because they think it's real. They think it's an actual thing happening. And so they're trying to respond in the most natural way possible. That's it's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
When you're talking with children, we don't need to do that because playing for them is kind of natural, right? They love playing. They get into the thing, right? Okay, I'm the teacher, you're the student. Let's go, right? But adults, you have to think about different strategies in order to jump into this teaching style. I'm saying teaching, learning, teaching, because why we use that, right? We believe, now getting July, thinking here in July, talk about language and content. Not only the content, if you teach only the content, that doesn't make sense. We need to relate that to a real life situation. It can't be something simple or not necessary. So doesn't necessarily daily basis routine, no. Okay, so the performance, you be the tool in order to apply that content, right? Bring it to real life situation. So children, for example, if they're playing at the supermarket, right? They are learning how to count, to differentiate colors, many things they can do while playing. They are at the supermarket buying and selling things there, for example. So that's the main idea of the performance, okay? Provides a context and environment where your student, you'll be able to not only put into practice, but to learn, to have the experience there. So, and if he or she doesn't know, that's the point. So, oh, how can I do that? Right? You're going to have the question.
Yeah, it's okay that they don't know that you're doing this for a specific reason. It's kind of like experiential learning,
yes,
that type of
totally.
idea where they're experiencing something and they're having all of these emotions that come with it. You know, if you stole a pencil and so where's the pencil? Where, you know, in that scenario that you had just given us, it would be, you know, people are going to get stressed and they're going to get flustered, and how are they going to respond to that? You know, and so they feel what it would be like really in that situation. Okay.
Exactly. Yes, and so when you think about the role play, remember I told you, so it's not the same thing as role play, because there are different meanings for role play, okay? But usually in our EFL context, if you don't have the script, you have a situation where the student is okay, and remember the structures, the chunks that I have to say, or lines. He kind of improvised, but he still have kind of a script to follow. It's different, okay? So that's the biggest difference from the role play. Role play, you're really living the thing.
So,
right?
Okay, so then here, okay, I have a question now.
Please.
So then, if we do like performative play, because I'm assuming that you've done this, you've trained teachers to use this. So if we do performative play in the beginning of a lesson, because I always try to make it like super practical. I mean, we're busy teachers, so we need to.
Awesome at the beginning of a lesson.
So like if you do at the beginning of the lesson, and then you do some sort of language, something in the middle of the lesson, and then you could do a role play at the end of the lesson with the same scenario, but now that they've gone through, they felt the scenario, right? Like they've done the performative play, they saw their performance, like how they were able to react. You give them some language so that they can do it better, and then they can practice. That would that be
it would be your option. I'm gonna say it's the first time. Okay, I'm like you're having ideas. Okay,
yeah, I'm just having ideas here, Samantha.
In adapting to your context. I say, why not? Okay, so do you really need to follow these ways? Or there are many ways that we can follow, but this is an option for sure. Because you have in mind, he doesn't have the language, he's feeling the context. Then I provide the language, and then it's not going to be a role play at the end. You're going to have the performance again, but now they have the language. The language.
Okay, true. Yeah, because if you only give them the language and not a script to follow, then it would still be the performative play. Mm-hmm. I was just thinking, like, as you were talking, I was like, so how could I do this in my lesson? You know, like, what could we? And of course, there's probably a million different ways that you can use this, but I think it would be really fun, especially for adults, because sometimes they're a little, against doing games or things like that. And they just want to, get the lesson done because they're serious and they have stuff to do. So it'd be kind of fun for them to say like, okay, so see how you reacted. So now let's improve on that. And let's give you some more language so that you can react in a way that you feel is more appropriate.
And then
not necessarily that they reacted bad.
Yeah. And then you can ask it then, okay, now after like, it's okay, it's perfect in this context. How can you apply this specific content in a different context? How can you do? So it's their turn. They're going to create. Okay, this context, what we're going to need, what you're going to say, what kind of people you'll be involved with. Okay, so it's not you anymore as a teacher providing them. They are using what they have learned and say, oh, I can use this in different situations, different contexts. Okay. So
or they could even contrast the context too. Like if they did, you're just giving me lots of ideas. It's just an idea generation show this time. No, because if they do the performative play and then you talk about it and you analyze, okay, so what was the relationship of the people that we're working together, in this scenario, not working together, but interacting with each other. How could it be different? What's a more familiar scenario for you? Is this similar or different to what you typically engage in? Okay. We have some bullet points. So before we get too off track and lots of ideas, we could talk for hours. We had put down here about something going beyond restrictions, zone of proximal development. So can we steer it back to that to give a little more context and information?
This beyond restrictions, I think this is what, at least in my opinion, I think one of the reasons I love so much performative play, it's because this possibility of going beyond restrictions, it's totally related with ZPD. I don't want to get into the scientific discussion of ZPD, but let's talk about beyond restrictions. Because, for example, talk about your beginner student that needs to travel. Well, he doesn't have the language yet. It's the first time the student is going to travel abroad, and you're providing a situation when he or she can actually live it. So this is going beyond restrictions. When you have children in mind, you're going to say, oh, you don't know how to write yet. You don't know how to read yet. You can't play being a waiter, for example. How are you going to write? You don't know how to write. No, please don't. Let's perform. give a piece of paper to the child and a pencil, write the way you want, draw whatever, or simply
I mean,
pretend.
they can draw. Yeah, they can draw things too if they can. They're not literate.
And with adults, that are, for example, a presentation, it's going to be the first presentation in English. It does need a rehearse, right? So instead of thinking about this rehearsal, like, okay, what are you going to say? Get more into this performance environment. Okay, this is a situation. I'm the CEO. You're going to give the presentation. You act like the CEO, and get they should into the atmosphere. So this is the beyond restrictions, because if he thinks, I'm not ready, I can't speak, I don't know how to say this and that, I haven't learned the past simple yet, how are you going to say that? No.
Right? Got it. You can kind of create the scenario and help them along the way, or even afterwards, they'll manage. Well, they have to figure out how to get through it.
And you have to plan this. Okay, you do have your lesson plan, and the moments, like I said, at the beginning, and then at the middle, I'm going to work specific with the language, and then I'm going they're going to perform again. So what's your quick plan, right? So in this first situation, if you have in mind that first is simple present and then simple past, forget it. When you talk about performance, what's the context? What language student you need? It doesn't mean you're teaching chunks, okay? Not talk about chunks, but we're talking about, we don't have a list of what's first, what's second first. That doesn't make sense, right? It doesn't make sense.
Well, as you're talking, okay, so yeah, you're making a lot of sense here. As you're saying this, I'm thinking to myself, okay, there's a couple things that popped into my mind as you were chatting there. One, that the students are also going to recognize where their gap is, which is something that is very sometimes difficult to show them. So if we put them into a performative play scenario and they try to do something and they struggle with it, or they feel uncomfortable with it, or not that we want them to struggle. I mean, that's not the goal, but they see the scenario, they feel the scenario, then they say, I need to be able to do this. And I wasn't really sure how to do it. I mean, I was successful enough, but I feel like that. So it will really help them kind of get on board for the lessons too, because the next thing that we had was a high level engagement. So I think once they realize that they can assess themselves as well, then they're going to want to do this performative play, because it's helping them see the things that are really important for them.
That's the idea, this feeling of needs, and you have this in the being part, because I think, let me check here, it's this not election, the high level of engagement is the next one. That exactly the point. He got engaged, he sees the need, the purpose of doing that, and then things just flow. Okay, let's do it.
They're on our side. We bring the students to the dark side. Come play with us. No, okay. And so the second thing that, because I was looking at our points, and then we have that performative play is ruled by social rules. So I was reading, I'm just going to go off on a tangent really quickly here. I was reading an article recently about cultural linguistics and how cultures play a huge role, obviously, in our language and world languages, and how, people speak second, third, whatever languages, foreign languages that they speak. And so here's why I'm connecting these dots. Some colleagues of mine have asked me, well, how do you integrate intercultural training into, and I feel like that is a really hard question, because we can teach you about a culture. I mean, that's like a terrible thing to say. I don't even like how that came out of my mouth, but we can show people aspects of a culture, but I feel like this performative play actually might support this idea of, because there's different social rules in different regions, and so if you can kind of
Totally.
right,
Yes. Right.
it's like very
Yes.
supportive of that idea of the intercultural education and which, I mean, it's going across, not just for kids or adults, it's in business. I mean, it's everywhere. Intercultural stuff, like people need to be able to communicate with one another.
Totally. Of course, it's going to be a performance, but it's, I believe, it's, let's say, better, I don't know if it's the best word, in order only to speak about it, because to speak about it's that you're speaking. It's here. You're not really feeling or living. We need to get, I think one of the, let's say, problems of the education nowadays, we are changing, okay? It's think that it's only here in the brain, the mind, and not bring it into action in real life and in the feelings and sensations. It's easy to discuss about being nice, how to behave. Okay, one thing it's to say, another it's really doing the thing, right? If someone goes there and punch you or do something, what are you gonna do? So that's
yeah,
the point.
there's I mean, well, I'm from the business English world, but I a colleague of mine who's wonderful, Evan Friendo, he always talks about business English. When you think about your students, you have to think about, are they going to talk about business or are they going to do business?
Right.
And so we have to make that distinction, because sometimes, for example, there are people in certain positions in companies and et cetera that need to learn a language to talk about the business. That's fine. Talk about the economy. But most of the people actually have to do business. They have to interact with people. They have to be able to deal with situations. So it seems
it
as
requires different skills and performance. I think we're great on that. Of course, you as a teacher are going to have to study about contents, but using these contents that apply the right language and content in performance, I think it will help a lot your students. When he's there in a real life situation, doing business, not talking about business. Yeah.
So I do have more questions for you. You are not off the hook yet. So the next question is, I know that you're a teacher trainer, teacher educator. Have you done training on this? And what's been the response? What have teachers said about the results that happen in their class when they start applying it? Is there anything that you can kind of give us insights to?
Yes. Well, I'll say it's, again, I would say it's easy to say, it's a challenge when you're really developing, like the performance itself for the teacher, it's okay. But what I found, it's that their challenge, it's building the classes based on that, right? Developing the classes. It was a challenge, a big challenge for most of them, but most of them got it. And
that's, can you give us a little, like, expand on that a little bit more? Because I feel like developing the classes and thinking about these scenarios, can you maybe some ideas?
That's that I told you that the others, we need another session to talk about social activities, because I'm already kind of talking about it without giving further explanations. Okay. Yeah. But
guys, we're just gonna have 10 hours of podcasting with
but let's see if I can say something quickly. Like
maybe a couple examples, and then we can go into more. Yeah.
Like when you started, when say, can I start with performance? Say, please do it in order to get into the context. So when you said, when I teach the language, that is the point. Okay, what I want to get from the content about this topic, so you get it. So that's to develop your classes that regularly use it too. Okay, and usually we do have like critical discussions about the topic, right? Like the one that's, I gave you the example about the stolen, the pencil was stolen. So like,
I love that example. I feel like students would freak out. It would be really fun.
We got into a discussion and about that before getting into the content itself, scientific content related. Okay. And then I say, oh, they'll perform again. It's like you're closing, bringing, because this performance, it doesn't happen only once. And it can expand. For example, I had a teacher. We got a parent that say, okay, we're traveling to Switzerland in December, and my child, 5 years old, I want her to learn a little bit of English, a private class. I said, okay, all right. And then I got called one of my teachers that had the profile for teaching kids. I said, okay, let's work with performative play. Okay. So she had only one child, so they're playing together all the time. But we built the whole curriculum based on this traveling to Switzerland. So I have she's the girl inside the airplane. She's in the hotel, skiing in the restaurant. We developed all the classes in these situations that we knew she was going to face when she gets there. And it worked.
Good.
The girl, she loved it. It was successful. And then the year after, the mother got back and she studied with us for more than a year.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yes. Yeah. See, I think that having that experience is actually quite useful for people. You know, like we said, either talking about English or actually like speaking in English, like they have to do something in English. Mm-hmm. I think it's quite impactful for students to see, because they feel, and especially I love the idea of not telling them. I love surprising students. I have to say that's one of my favorite things to do, just kind of surprising them with something new. And I think not telling them would be like a really fun way to introduce this idea of like, okay, so this is what we're going to do. And just try and do it. I mean, there's quite a few things in textbooks now, and I want to know kind of if you think that they fall into this category. For example, well, we can do a general English and a business English example. So in business English, we have case studies at the end of units, usually, I mean, in some major books. And I actually quite enjoy the case studies because they give the person some information, and then they say, okay, have a meeting, decide on, I don't know, the new marketing strategy or something like that. And then in like a general English book, sometimes they have the like a prompt. Okay, so now this is the scenario. One person is, I don't know, the store owner, and one person is the customer or something like that. Would these fall into that category?
Well, it depends how the teacher going to look at it, right?
Okay. So then how could we look at these and like, because we see, these are very common things that we see in printed materials. So teachers, don't freak out. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can use something there, but how can we create the performative play from that?
It's well, first the teacher needs to. What I see my teachers like doing. When I was the coordinator at a language school, they had a book, business book, like that, and I said, please look at that. How about we started with this performance first, instead of working with this vocabulary first, like in the first moment, just to set the context. Like you said, exactly what, right?
Okay.
So this is one possibility. Okay, start by the end of the unit, not at the beginning.
I mean, if you have the flexibility too, right? I mean, some institutions you can't, yes. but it would be a good, like a warm-up activity, a warm-up lesson to kind of get everybody into it. And then the language lessons that, you know, skills and systems and everything that followed would then be very obvious to them why they were
yes, that's the point, guys. What's the point? What's the meaning? Why am I doing that? Right? I think it's important. Why they should go there just to speak this and that, to have a listening practice? Because we're learning about this. So the difference. How to give me a business example?
Conference calls.
Conference calls. So, okay, but I don't have conference calls. Okay, but it's gonna work 1-2 classes, and then we're gonna move for something else. So, right. But you need to have the purpose.
Okay, very interesting. And can we look a little bit into the differentiation between, I can see it clearly, but I also can see how they are connected: task-based learning, project-based learning, and then also performative play, because I feel like performative play could be leveraged in those frameworks, I guess.
Performative play, it's a tool, like when you ask me, in the classes how we build. We use social activity, performative play inside, a way to develop a curriculum based on social activities, right? So now you're bringing the task-based and
task-based and project-based
learning. Of course, project-based learning. Totally project-based learning fits really well. I'm project-based learning too. And yes,
because task, some people don't know. I don't have my, I would have to probably reference, but there's very specific criteria for it to be a task. So not all activities are tasks, but tasks usually are meaningful, that you're judging on whether or not they can actually perform the task, not if they can use specific language to do that, et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of, anyways, people please look into what a task actually is, because we're using that word a little bit wrong. But yeah, so task-based learning and project-based learning seem like they could really benefit from this performative play, because it's
performance.
It's a tool, a technique. It's not a methodology or a framework. No. It's something that you can use in the classroom in addition to other things, right?
Yes, of course, as I said, there are specific bases on that, right? But you can adapt in different situations. As I said, the way I taught the teachers in the courses I delivered was based on social activities. But it doesn't mean you can't use in a different context and adapt. But one thing we have to have in mind, and I'm getting here the things that you wrote, as to call a performance, to call a performative play, needs to be related to social practice, like an action. Otherwise, it's not. Okay. Another point. Go beyond restrictions. So forget it. My student doesn't know how to say that. No, go beyond restrictions. And high level of engagement. Okay. So these are the main points you need to have in mind.
And you did mention that in the beginning that it's different than role play, because role play, you have a script.
You have a script. Role play, you have only, you worried about the language itself only. And when you talk about performance, of course we have the language as a point, but the whole environment also. So there are rules, there are other things related to the social practice that it's also important, and not only the language itself. The language is part of it. And of course, as when you're teaching a language, this is our main point, but as you're seeing and facing, it's main point, but not only, because you have to tackle different contexts in order to your student have success when he really needs to use it, the language, right? Okay,
so I feel like I have it clear in my head. I feel like I'm clear. I've got lots of ideas coming out, but so for people who have not heard of this before and they want some more information, are there any references or influential people that are working in the area that, I mean, I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but I mean, we can put,
I can. And I had that in mind. I said, she's going to ask me. Okay, let me see.
Callie, not nice. No, because now I'm interested and I want to see, you know, people should look for references.
There are, yes, for sure. There are articles, theses. I already have some. I can select others and send to you, and then you.
Oh yeah, I'll put it in the show notes
yes.
of the episode. Good. Okay, so there is literature on this where people can go and are there books? You don't have to remember the names right now, but are there books where people can go to see something that's creative or innovative, like suggestions of social practices?
There are articles and books. There one is specific. I don't know if it's available for selling right now. I think this one, no. Because what's the point? Most of it comes from Vygotsky theory, okay? And then there are books from two great social interactionists. So sorry.
Interactionist. Yeah, yes. I wouldn't even know how to say that.
There are great books from them. They talk about performance a lot. So a lot of this is based on them. Mm-hmm. Okay. And then many from our LASI research group. Okay. That comes from. So these articles will come from these people that I'm going to send to you. Okay, so there are books in English that is specific about performance. Okay, there are articles from the group, and there is a book in Portuguese also, but I don't think if this book is available.
Okay, we'll find it and reference it, see if people can find it. Yes. Now that, okay, also I have one more question. I've got a lot. I'm sorry. When we see, okay, so we've decided this is the social interaction that I want to deal with. This is something that's going to be beneficial for my students. How much demand or how comfortable do you think teachers are currently in analyzing that social interaction?
Analyzing, you mean they shouldn't?
No, not necessarily when it's happening, but like coming up with the idea of, okay, I'm going to have a class. We're going to do performative play in the beginning, and then we're going to work on a little bit of language. The performative play, you have to understand what happens in that social interaction, right? Like you have to have a background or a basis for, okay, this is probably going to happen, or this is a scenario that's plausible. How challenging do you think that is for some teachers? Because some people don't have a lot of. Did you not say? Okay, this is
it demands study and research.
Right,
it cannot be something like a 15 minutes class plan. You need to study. But also, for example, I believe in your context, you have learned a lot. For you, when you think a situation, it's going to be easier than if it was your first time dealing with a specific.
Okay, yeah, that's what I'm kind of getting at. So for people like teachers that are starting like their initial, it's in the beginning of their careers, or maybe they've, and I'm not trying to say that this is bad, but for example, people who go to university, study, graduate, get their, diplomas and everything else, and then they decide to teach. They don't have a lot of experience with some of these scenarios. So I feel like it would be challenging for them as well.
Yes, well, when I as a teacher, I like when I have to learn about something that I don't know. So
that's kind of the point of this whole podcast. Yeah. It's like the goal of my life now.
So if you're not this kind of person, I will say, okay, I think this is not for me. But yes, it does require studying and looking for information. Otherwise, your classes will be based only what it's on the book, right?
Yeah, I'm thinking that while it sounds amazing, I'm definitely going to implement some of it. But I also can see that there are going to be some challenges for some people who maybe who don't have a lot of life experience or work experience or dealing with people that have to work in specific situations. For example,
I don't have internet nowadays.
you do, but so, I mean, how I don't know, like sometimes people say it's realistic.
It depends on the context. It's not so difficult. If like, if you're, I don't want to say this is less or less important, not deep, okay? But related to your personal experiences, when you're teaching children, it's easier to say, oh, I know this context better. It's easier for me, like, okay, let's have a birthday party. Okay, I've had a birthday party, so I know how it works.
Right, yeah.
Right, so, but of course, if a teacher that's like inside your working context, it requires more knowledge.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, I see it as a super useful tool and like definitely a cool technique, but then also that there has to be some not that you can't use it if you don't have a lot of experience, but there has to be considerations that you use it in a way that is actually beneficial. Like you have to look something up. For example, I was going to say, for example, I have a colleague a few colleagues actually, they work with air traffic controllers and they work, with the Brazilian army. So they work with pilots, aircraft. I would not even know what scenario I could do, right? So then I would have to look and research and figure it out and ask people and collaborate with somebody else that has experience in it, because, there's certain scenarios that we're going to run into that we have no idea.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So it's amazing, but also we have to, take into consideration that we're bringing something useful, the scenario, the context.
Yeah. Right. You need to be aware that you going beyond the language.
Right. Okay. Any last minute tips or tricks or anything else? We will put all the book references that you find for us and articles. We'll put them in the show notes. But any last tips for anybody who's interested in integrating performative play?
I think this vision about the learning and teaching, that when I start saying like go beyond the content itself, like it's have in mind that we don't live here, the brain, the mind, but actually, right, we'll have to face real life situations. And
it's because of the pandemic, we're all thinking that we can just stay on our computers and just sit here and interact like this.
When you talk about school context, the students, okay, sit here on the table, stay here for 4 hours, listening, reading, writing. How come? Can you stand staying 4 hours doing that? And why? I think it's time to ask why. Of course, we need to learn all these skills, but not only. So let's
in a specific way
get out of the box. That's the thing I'll say. Let's get out of the box.
Nice. I think that's a wonderful message. Okay. Well, I want to thank you so much for spending, almost an hour here with me chatting about performative play. You're so welcome to come back, because I think we have another. Well, we've got lots of ideas, so we're going to have to get back together soon. And thanks again.
Thank you, Kelly. Yes, and just give me a call. I can be here again and we chat more.
Okay, absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Ready to join the conversation? Head on over to Instagram at Real Talk and ELT Pod or at Kelly Pennington ELT and send me a message. That's it for me. Take care of yourself, your health, your vibe, and your tribe. Until next time.